Live developments now in Stilfontein, where our Zaniko Umhlaba is. I want to take us directly there next. Zaniko, sad news that there has been another body retrieved and being brought to the surface as we speak. Tell us more.
Yes, indeed, Iman. At the last time we spoke about, the polling that was done by community volunteers who've been operating the ropes. And of course, at that time, they were pulling a rope and were told that there was something that was being pulled onto the surface. And just 10 minutes ago, we were told that indeed, that it was a body which was being pulled. As you see there in your frame, Forensic Pathology Services loading the deceased body onto the back of their vehicle. As you can see, the members, the volunteers who were busy at the scene are currently being asked to step aside, and we understand that it is due to the smell that is coming out of the hole where that body was retrieved, but also, giving space to the health experts or forensic services, so that they conduct their own processes now in terms of taking over that body as we see them getting into that car. And of course, I must say and commend the pathology services because yesterday it would take them about 45 minutes after being called onto the scene for them to arrive at the scene. But when we arrived at the scene about 2 hours ago, they were already also arriving with the rest of law enforcement agencies. And obviously, when it was confirmed that the body had been retrieved, they went swiftly to attend to that. As we see, this is the barking out that is carrying that deceased body. So we also understand, according to the information that was given to us, that there are multiple bodies underground. So I think maybe for the next 3 hours or so, we might see 1 or 2 more bodies being retrieved there with those volunteers making their way. Looking at their body language, they're very bit sad and discouraged. But also when we spoke to them earlier on in terms of are they ready for what is likely going to happen today, they said, well, they were briefed properly about what to expect today. They will do what needs to be done in order to save the lives of those that are still underground alive, but also try to pull onto the surface, the bodies of the deceased. So that's where things are. The mood is a bit somber at this point, Iman, as you can imagine. It's not even been 2 hours since everybody arrived at the scene, but we're already talking about a body that has been retrieved. So that's how the situation is right now. And of course, we are expecting them that in about maybe an hour, 45 minutes after everything has been confirmed, and then they will return to the scene to also retrieve the next body, if indeed the suggestions we got yesterday, is indeed valid and accurate in terms of the number of bodies who are still, numbers of bodies that are still underground. So from yesterday to today, we can confirm that 3 bodies have been confirmed in the past 24, have been retrieved from underground in the past 24 hours. So we'll see how things will be going up until maybe lunchtime, whether there will be another body. But it looks as if, the volunteers are very committed. But I must also commend the relations and the respect both sides have at where we are right now at the shaft. The law enforcement agencies have been swiftly going on about their own responsibilities of monitoring every operation that is taking place here. And of course, we've seen community leaders, having cordial relations and engagements in terms of what is it that they need and what is it that they must not do in terms of terms and conditions and the parameters of the spaces in which they must support. They are supposed to be, doing their operations within. And so far, it's been good. But also with us as the members of the media, all these gentlemen who have been here with us, the relations have been very cordial. We've been updated, live in terms of what is happening at the scene. And that is why we are able to then to also communicate that to the viewers and to yourself in terms of what is happening here where we are, Iman, at this point.
So just quickly for context, Zaniko, we heard from some of the civil society bodies yesterday about how these networks all work together in terms of the shafts themselves. So you're at shaft 11, which we were told yesterday is one of the most complicated shafts to get out of, just given its tunneling and the network associated with us. There's Margaret and there's also shaft 10. So there's Margaret, shaft 10 and 11. Just talk to us about how all of this works together and why we were seeing those huge numbers emerge from Margaret and then things sort of die down afterwards.
All right. So that has been debated to a certain extent, Iman, in terms of whether this shaft can relate in terms of movement, in terms of the tunnels underground or not. But as you said, that this is the most complicated shaft, which is shaft 11, in terms of anyone underground having chances of survival if they were to try to climb onto, that big hole. But also what is very clear here is that there aren't any form of hanging points where, as Zineko Mhlabo's underground, I can't use anything on the walls that, I can take advantage of and try to hold on to as I'm making my way onto the surface. So it's a plain tunnel that you cannot physically or practically, use to resurface on your own, whether you're 100% fit or not. So that's what needs to be clarified as far as this particular shaft is concerned. Shaft 10 is a bit better and less complicated compared to shaft 11, but also the dangers that are there at shaft 10 is the issue that as you climb onto the things that are still installed, that are still present along the tunnel as you try to climb up, those things are still existing, they're still holding on very strong onto the wall, but the razor fences which you must maneuver your way through as you're making your way onto the surface. So that's where the danger starts. So by the time you get onto the surface, you'll probably be injured, you'll have some scars, then it will depend, the extent of those scars will depend on how you were able to maneuver yourself onto the surface. So that I would say it's a semi-dangerous compared to shaft 11 where we are. That's where we've been seeing a lot of illegal miners coming out, but not in great numbers as they've been coming out at Margaret. So in the past 2 weeks or so, a lot of people have been coming out from Margaret shaft, but also shaft 10. No one has been able to come onto the surface using shaft 11. Then we move to to Margaret shaft. That's the safest, shaft anyone underground can use to come onto the surface. Reason being that mine is still operational. It is still in use, unlike where we are right now. So there's still that shaft, that catch which was used back then to transport miners onto the down to the ground, but also use the same catch to climb onto the surface. So that's what those illegal miners have been using at shaft 10. That's where we've seen the most numbers, of illegal miners resurfacing from that shaft. So that is why it was then advised, the law enforcement agencies advised local leaders to inform the illegal miners under the ground that, well, those who are able to walk on and make their way to Margaret shaft, they can do that. But, following those conversations and following that communication, we also advised that is not actually correct. You cannot travel from shaft 11 to Margaret shaft because the lines and the tunnel and the system underground are not aligned, are not linked in any way. So if you're at shaft 11, chances of you making your way to Margaret shaft are impossible. Actually none to some extent, if I were to be as clear as they can be. So what we are not clear on, though, man, is that whether shaft 10 and shaft 11 are connected. Those who've been coming out at shaft 10, they were saying that they've had to walk, they had to take a journey of about 7 days before they're able to come onto the surface. So the journey from underground, which is about 2 kilometers and more, onto the surface at shaft 11 is much more complicated, but more safer compared to shaft 11 where we are right now.
All right, this is a story that's developing by the minute. Zineko Mhlaba, thank you very much. Outside shaft 11 in Stilfontein in the northwest.